Hi, friends. I hope you enjoyed listening to the story, How Rocket Learned to Read. It's one of Mrs. Russell's favorite stories to read to you, so I hope you liked listening to it. Let's get a picture of our story. Here it is. The title, How Rocket Learned to Read. The author and the illustrator were Tad Hills. He wrote the words and drew the pictures. Okay, let's think about some of the details in our story. There were two main characters. Can you remember who they were? Our first main character was Rocket the dog, and there was another main character, a little yellow bird, and she had a special job. What was her job? She was the teacher. So let's now think about some of the details in the story. What was the problem in the beginning of the story? The problem was that Rocket did not want to go to school, right? He wanted to nap and play. But the little yellow bird solved that problem by reading Rocket a story. And Rocket really wanted to hear the end of the story, so he kept coming back to school and he learned to love school and learned how to read. Now, at the end of the story, I asked you to think about some of the ways that Rocket learned to read and if it reminded you of any of the ways that you learned to read. So let's go over some of the things that Rocket did to learn to read and see if we did the same thing in our school. So the first thing that Rocket did in the beginning of the story when he was learning how to read is Rocket learned the letters in the alphabet. Remember, the little yellow bird hung up this alphabet banner with all of the letters, the capital and the lowercase, and he taught Rocket the letters and the sounds they make. And here is a picture of a zebra because zebra begins with the letter Z and the sound Z. So Rocket learned the letters in the alphabet. And so did we. We learned the letters in the alphabet. In our classroom, we had an alphabet banner hanging just like the little yellow bird with all of the capital letters and the lowercase letters. And here's the alphabet chart that we used for Writer's Workshop that you had in your folder with, again, the capital and the lowercase letter and a picture for each sound, right? There's an apple next to the letter A because the letter A makes the sound ah. So one of the first things we did in school to learn how to read was learn all of the letters in the alphabet and the sounds for each letter. You did a great job at that, boys and girls. So something else that Rocket did in the story was that he listened to stories, right? The little yellow bird would read Rocket books. And remember the book about the bird who lost his bone made Rocket really want to come back to school to hear the end of the story. Well, just like Rocket, we listen to stories, right? Mrs. Russell and Mrs. Savage read you stories every day in school. Here's some of our favorites. There's two Dr. Seuss books, The Cat in the Hat and Green Eggs and Ham, two Mo Willems books, Don't Let the Pigeon Drive the Bus, and an Elephant and Piggy book. And we read stories every day. Let's see what else Rocket did. Rocket learned to sound out words. Remember that once he learned the letters in the alphabet, he put them together to make words like d, ig, dig, and sun. Well, boys and girls, you did the same thing, right? We learned to sound out words. Every day we would practice putting the sounds for each letter together to build words. So I'm going to give you a minute to try to sound out these words. How about this one? Let's do it together. Bed, bed. Did you say bed? You're right. Okay, here's this one. I'm going to give you a minute to try it on your own. Okay, let's do it together. Zip, zip. See? Good job. If you said zip, you're right. Okay, here's the last word. I'm going to give you a minute to try it on your own. Okay, let's do it together. Pig, pig. And there's our pig. Great job, boys and girls. Okay, now I want you to think about all the ways that Rocket learned to read and all the ways that you learned to read. We did some of the same things as Rocket. We listened to stories, we learned the letters in the alphabet, we learned to sound out words, but that's not all we did. We did even more than that, right? We learned sight words, and you learned so many sight words, and you learned how to read them in a snap and to spell them. We practiced every day. One of the most important ways to learn to read is to practice. And every day you would practice during centers with Mrs. Russell and Mrs. Savage, and you would practice at home. And we played games at centers with letters and words, and you did so many things, and you did a great job learning how to read. And now you're going to choose one way that you learned how to read and write a sentence about it. So here's our writing paper. It says, how, learn to read. That blank space is the space for your name. So you will write your name on the line. It said, so my paper would say, how Mrs. Russell learned to read. And there's a spot on the top for a picture. You can draw our classroom or your house or anywhere that you practice reading or where you learned how to read. Then you can write a sentence on the bottom. You can start your sentence, I learned to read by, and then you can choose one of the ways. I learned my letters, I practiced my sight words, I listened to stories, whatever way you learn to read, then you can write a sentence about it, okay? I can't wait to see your sentences, boys and girls. Don't forget to send us a picture. Great job.